So essentially this video is just going to be a long diatribe about Minecraft and Minecraft related things and just a little bit of thoughts and feelings on me and my words and what I'm thinking / what I'm feeling. So essentially in Minecraft you basically have infinite possibilities. You have the entire world at your fingertips, but a lot of the time we just follow the same path entirely. We load into a world, we create a home, and then we basically get every achievement in the game we can try to get, like beating the game as in fighting and killing the end dragon, or beating the game by fighting and killing the wither, or beating the game and fighting and killing the guardian in the ocean. You see a theme, you see a constant theme. It's about beating bosses, and yeah, there's a lot of beating bosses in Minecraft nowadays. There's a lot of beating the trial chambers, which they've just added to the new version, the 1.21 version. But it kind of gets repetitive. You go into a new world, and that's sort of the same goal. And that's interesting because a lot of the time in the olden days of Minecraft, that wasn't the goal. The goal was you just loaded into a game and there was a focus on not just beating the mobs, but also just exploring the world and creating things, creating builds. And now that element gets focused upon a bit less in a lot of mainstream Minecraft media. By mainstream Minecraft media, I don't mean the game itself. The game still and the developers of the game still very much focus on adding things to the game to build with and supporting builders and building, and that's good. I think that's good, but there is a massive there is a massive amount of the game and the community that focuses on simply playing the game like I'm doing here, fighting bosses, fighting mobs, and that's fun. But I feel like it gets repetitive after a while, doing the same thing again and again in the game. I mean, you'd say that about any game. If you play it again and again, and you do the exact same thing again and again, eventually it's probably going to lose its impact, right? That's basic logic. That's human psychology 101. But I suppose there's something still fun about playing this game and doing the same thing, fighting mobs. I mean, there's still something fun about that element of, will I survive this or not? Will I be able to beat this mob without losing all my stuff and get away unscathed? I could easily get blown up by a ghost and knocked into lava and lose all my stuff. There's that element of suspense. There's stakes involved. And you're never gonna fight the same fight exactly the same more than once. So in that way, because of the open world nature of Minecraft, it's never the same. But the gameplay itself and the weapons you use, they're limited, but the ways you can use them are technically unlimited. I mean, look at me here. I'm up against the odds. I'm up against over 10 blazes and wither skeletons spawning at the same time, trying to use the right looting tool and not my normal sword or my bow to kill the skeletons to get the wither skulls, but at the same time trying to fight the other mobs to stay alive and not die at the same time. And that's interesting. I find that fun. That's fun. That's a fun aspect of the game. I'm enjoying that. Even though it's tough, it's interesting because it's not the same mob spawning in the same places every single time. It varies. Ow. But when you do fight a mob and you lose, it can be quite frustrating, especially if you lose and you can't regain all of the stuff that you've worked for hours and hours in the game to attain. and there's no way to get them back. They're gone forever, potentially, when they fall into lava and burn. And there are ways around this rule. You can turn on keep inventory, you can go into creative and get your stuff before it despawns, or you can log out of the game and get someone to TP you away from the incoming death if you're on a server or some sort of multiplayer world. So there are ways and elements that you can implement to get around that. For instance, modding Minecraft, you can add the gravestone mod, which will save your stuff. In most cases, you could just have to get back to the same location and find it, and usually with a gravestone mod you have other mods which might add a waypoint to get back to your location of death so you don't lose where you are when you died. So there are ways to get around the issues of losing your stuff, so therefore there are ways to take away the tension of losing the game and losing all the stuff you've worked hard to obtain. And in some cases, I think that makes the game more enjoyable, because it allows you to freely take on the challenges. And yeah, you can take the embarrassment of losing and dying, but at least you don't lose all your progress up until that point in one simple death. And it allows you to build up more skills, I suppose, without the punishment of losing everything in the game. But I guess this is a way Minecraft allows us to explore something which we can't do in real life. and I'm not talking about the death element. I just mean building up a skill without having to fear for that skill's entirety being lost in a simple mistake. And that lesser pressure allows you to develop that skill in a way which sometimes in real life we can't. As an artist, every move you make after you gain an audience at a certain point is scrutinized to a level which earlier in your artistic journey you may have had no level of scrutiny from that external pressure, no level of extra criticism which would put you back or deter you from trying to do something which you haven't attempted to do before with your art, that you know, at least based on all the examples before, hasn't been scrutinized to an extent of negative feedback or negative criticism. So in that way you get incentivized to do the same thing over and over again. However, when you're an artist, usually you're trying to convey a message or give meaning through your work, and that could just be entertaining someone for 8 minutes, or it could be trying to make someone stay better, or it could be a very specific message, like don't steal, don't be bad, don't a moral, basically. Some art has morals involved. Actually, I'd say in all art there's a political message underlined, even if you don't intend it. There is always a political thread in art, and when you're telling stories through the medium of a video on YouTube, whether that be a comedic genre or a fantasy genre or any type of genre, you have a responsibility as an artist to be careful about what messages you're portraying, how you're portraying characters or themes or statements in your work, which will influence the people watching them. And sometimes you can make mistakes. Sometimes artists can make mistakes, and in their work, messages and meanings they didn't intend to say pop up. Or maybe they didn't understand the full extent of maybe something they themselves hadn't self-analysed before stating it in their own work, which they upload to thousands of people for criticism, and they will receive criticism for it regardless of whether they ask for it or not. That's what being an artist is putting your work out into the world and getting feedback. Because if you don't make your art and then put it out into the world, it's not really being an artist. That's kind of cyclical, but hopefully you understand what I mean by that. So essentially you have this cyclical nature of putting something out into the world, risking criticism, and doing it over and over and over again. And when something new pops up that you may not have intended to pop up, that kind of reflects something about yourself that maybe you didn't quite realize, or maybe you did realize but didn't intend to convey through your work, it then becomes probably shocking to an audience to see that, especially if it's one that wasn't used to seeing that reflection in the work. And I think how you go about as an artist responding to criticism or responding to how an audience receives your work determines a lot about you as a person. With YouTube, there's always this extra layer of distortion because we don't know how much of something that you put out in art is intended and unintended. When art alone is received without looking at the biography of a creator of the art, it can lead to different interpretations. But that's a deterministic way to look at and analyze art. Sometimes when you're looking at art, you want to keep a biographical outlook in mind and collate that with different aspects of reading something, and therefore you can get a more interesting understanding of what that art is saying and what that art is and the quality of that art. But on YouTube, there's an element of distortion of this because a lot of the way some creators portray themselves is part of the art itself. And that brings into it an element of being a performer. How much of the performance we see in videos on YouTube is the person, and how much is the art? And how much of the art do we see conveying what the person is, and how much is actually a distortion of that and a persona? And then there's an extra element, a more new element of people wanting to know that the person they're watching or the person that is creating the art is a good person and has morals and values that align with them. Otherwise they don't want to watch or consume or support art from a person who isn't upholding the moral values that they themselves would want to promote. So it becomes even more important when you're making art online, when you're making videos online, when you're making any sort of political statements. You convey the way you feel and the change you want to bring into the world through your art as much as possible for the things you're trying to achieve with it. So it becomes even more disappointing if there's a persona or an individual that you followed for a long time that turns out to not be the person you expected. And this isn't exclusive to just artists and people responding to art. It's a thing in lots of different relationships, social relationships, but it becomes far more difficult to navigate when it's a parasocial relationship between a person who's receiving art and creating art. There's no hard rules, there's no guidebook, there's no set of There's no set of criteria to follow except for the one you create yourself, the boundaries you put up yourself. And... 16 minutes and I haven't said a word, huh? How am I supposed to talk about this sort of thing? I don't really know. Basically, I'm trying to formulate a sentence here. Give me a minute. Essentially, it becomes incredibly disappointing when you start to see elements of moral codes or compasses in the persona that you've watched not align with anything or something that you yourself personally would not agree with, or actions that you personally would never take. That sense of cognitive dissonance naturally feeds into a feeling of betrayal. But this could have just been simply the person themselves changing, or them showing their true thoughts and feelings without intending it. Or it could be a deliberate act on their part to distance themselves from an audience or community they may have fed into or fostered with their previous art. How do you deal with, as an artist, fostering a community that you don't personally relate to and potentially have different moral values and judgments and outlooks on the world? Personally, I believe that if you don't have inspiration as an artist, if you have no more inspiration, it's gonna negatively impact your work. And based on what I've seen, I think that's definitely true. As an artist, I look to the world around me for inspiration with what I create, and that sounds rather pretentious when I'm just making Minecraft videos on YouTube, but there's a lot of personal significance behind that for me, and what that type of work and what that type of art made by other people has achieved in the past for me. And that's part of why I do it. But also, there's a lot of things you can do with YouTube as a medium that I want to achieve in the future. But to get to the point of resources and quality of work in what I'm making on YouTube itself, you gotta work really hard to achieve it. So the artist or the person that you've connected with as an artist through their art has turned out to not be showing the same things in their work suddenly that does not align with your personal beliefs or what you would expect from someone whose art you'd want to support. What do you do in that scenario? My answer, naturally, is to stop watching or stop consuming the art that they make. But if these actions and these personas and these statements aren't always present consistently throughout the art that they put out, it's difficult to understand if what they did was just a mistake or a reflection of their true nature. There's all of these different elements flying through the air about this situation, and how are you supposed to determine a course of action? What do you do when an artist that you've supported for a long amount of time, financially and socially, turns out to be an individual that has either malicious actions or has done things that you would never repeat yourself, and then put that into their body of work and published it? I think naturally, the thing I would do in that situation would be stop supporting and consuming their content. I mean, why would I? But if that individual then responds to criticism on those points and changes, how do you know that the truth of the change was a part of who they are as a person rather than a persona shift to protect their career or their monetary assets in the art they create? I don't know. I think I'd look at their actions to try and determine the veracity of that change. But even then, it is only through what they put out through their art that you can see those actions most of the time, or their social presence online. Most people would give the benefit of the doubt. I think the most positive outcome I could see in a situation like that would be public criticism of an individual for the things in their work, and genuine remorse for a potential misunderstanding or ignorance, and ooh, well, that with a head skull just burned in lava. Whoops. And a continuation of the production of art or the medium of art that was previously undertaken. But if there's no public criticism of that art, if there's a discouragement of public criticism of any type of art, it's going to foster a community that only responds positively to any and all art and ignores any sort of criticisms or disruptions of what they expected, to just continue supporting that. Oh. What the hell? Ow, 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 ow. To continue supporting that creator, that artist. I think when a creator or an artist changes for the worse, it means that their body of work is going to reflect it, and I think the quality of that body of work suffers as an effect. And I feel like I've seen this change in a lot of YouTubers and a lot of artists to a more general extent. There have been changes which have been incredibly shocking, and changes that have been gradualized over time, but prominently visible if compared to much earlier work. It's challenging to watch potential be wasted in a lot of art on YouTube, especially when it's discouraged to strike out and be different from what is popularized because it will work to get higher views or more engagement. So it's really saddening to watch certain creators that you may have looked up to, or certain creators that you may have followed for years, turn into individuals which you can't relate to and do things that you never would. Disconnect from you on a moral scale because of various reasons, of which I don't need to list because I'm sure you can think of some in your head. I think just in general in art, there's a lot of artists that have different eras in their body of work. I'm thinking classical painters here. So there's like popular eras, and then there's later works which may not get as much attention, but when you look back on them, you might like just as much. But it's the fact that they don't get popular or as popular as the more famous eras of the paintings, that means that you don't see them as much, but they are still there and part of the body of work. So it's interesting to see how that body of work changes over time throughout someone's lifetime too, because there's some really significant changes. Some of the work in the later years can actually be far more impressive than the work in the earlier years, but just doesn't get as much attention because it wasn't as popular. There are definitely lots of transitional periods between different artists' eras, and you could say, well, yeah, the transitional period era of work here is shit. But I think a lot of artists might relate to this. The best thing you can do to grow as an artist and as a creator is be able to respond well to criticism. But I think the more audience you get and the larger the amount of criticism you get, it's harder to get good criticism or to see good criticism, constructive feedback. Because of popularization, I feel a lot of people that give things which the creator might view as criticism, whereas constructed by a person who did not intend it as criticism, that is viewed as criticism by them. And I guess it's a lot harder for them to find critical feedback unless it's peer-reviewed. And then peer review becomes a bit of a challenge in creator scenes, because you don't know who's actually telling you the truth. You don't know if someone has a full understanding compared to you, or it's hard to put yourself in the shoes of a completely fresh set of eyes as a creator. And it's harder to get that feedback. I can't imagine what some creators must see and then get put off by when receiving vast sums of response to their body of work. But it's interesting to see what develops and how those developments are shown in their body of work when potentially all critical analysis has gone out the window. I mean, if I didn't get any sort of feedback on any of my videos that I ever put out again, I would feel like I would quit. I would probably quit. I don't know. There's just... I don't see a point in making art for me. Well, I do make art for me. But that's different to the art I put on YouTube. When I make art and I share it, I don't want it to have no impact whatsoever. I want it to have an impact. A positive impact, preferably. But when you're making art, sometimes there will be people out there who find the art and weren't the intended recipients of the art and will be utterly offended and hurt, or just don't get it. So maybe when a creator pivots from a point... Oh, I can't use that word. When a creator changes to reflect a new moral compass or alignment and doesn't receive the critical feedback from previous sources, or they themselves have changed and surrounded themselves in personas and people that do not align with who they may previously done, and this shows in the body of work, you're going to get a massive disconnect between that art and that audience. And that could be positive for the artist, because maybe that was the intent. If an artist intends to alienate the audience that no longer relates to their work or to them, putting out art that continues to drive that change is a thing we see a lot on YouTube, and a thing we see a lot in artists, in music, and other mediums. But if this is an unintended change, or a change that a creator later comes to regret, there is no undoing it. There can be attempts to undo it, but it's hard to do. I've had a lot of experiences over the past 4 years with creators of all different levels and individuals, socially, personally, professionally, and I've found in a lot of cases that people often turn out not to be who I thought they were. As an artist and someone who also consumes art, it's hard for me to watch art that I have grown to enjoy turn into something that I don't. And you might be, some people might be tempted to say that it's because I've changed or grown as a person and my tastes and that have changed, but it's when you go and look back at previous body of work that was made by an artist or a creator that you may still enjoy and still relate to and still see elements of that you can pinpoint that are no longer present in the current body of work that help you determine whether that's true or not. So how does this relate to Minecraft? I can make a pretty strong analogy. Minecraft as a game has been updated again and again and again, and so many different opinions and viewpoints on each and every update are present on the internet and vocally shared and talked about even between individuals offline, and I think that's reflective of something, an art form that's been refined again and again and again, and lots of different people will have lots of different opinions about which part of Minecraft is their favourite, which update was their favourite, which update was executed the best, which update was executed the worst, the types of music, the types of mobs, the types of gameplay, how you play Minecraft completely differs from person to person and player to player. but I still enjoy Minecraft because of parts of the game that were present that I absolutely fell in love with when I was a kid. So it's still my favorite game. It's still the game I play the most. And there's been lots of different updates which I didn't like. There's been elements of the game added I didn't like. But so many of those old elements are still there and still present and part of the game. But if, for some reason, they change the game and remove those elements that I find the most important, the elements that, for me, make Minecraft Minecraft, or they change them that didn't make it feel like Minecraft anymore to me, didn't make it feel like the game I've been playing for the past 10 years, I don't think I'd play the new version of Minecraft anymore. I'd still, luckily, be able to enjoy the old versions as much as I want, and that's a massive, massive, amazing thing that we're lucky to be able to do. As long as they allow that to continue. Hopefully one day they don't decide to change that. But I don't think I'd play the new updates of Minecraft anymore. Maybe I would. Maybe I'd play another update if they changed the things back, or I heard word of changing the things back. But I don't think I'd be paying that much attention anymore. Because I'd already have experienced the death of, in my words, the game that I'd loved the most. So it would take a lot for someone to go back to playing a game, or a new version of that game, after that had occurred. And may not be possible entirely, considering the direction of the game after doing that would push on with that change, surely. It would take a lot for that change to be reversed, and I feel like that's a reflection massively of art and artists, because at the end of the day, video games are an art form, and Minecraft's an artistic game. A game that gives people experiences, a game that sends a message. Especially at the end, there's an entire poem. And poems do and poems do add to art. I do believe poems are an art form, so also I've heard, I think, maybe. Just a hunch. Poems are an art form. So yeah. Those are just a bunch of thoughts and feelings and, honestly, frustrations that I've been feeling. And I do try sometimes when I'm looking at my videos, and I'm making my videos, to leave in elements that I might have cut to save face. And I think that's important because I still want there to be some sort of reflection of me and who I am in my work. Or as close as I can get to through a medium portraying myself, because in art there's nothing to portray something 100% accurately. I don't think any artist has done it yet. I don't think that's technically possible. You cannot imitate the real thing, but you can reflect it and comment on it, I suppose. So yeah. I think I'm gonna continue to watch people make art out of this game, or make art in general, and I'm gonna continue loving art, and I'm gonna continue to be disappointed by people who make the art and then no longer be able to engage the same way with the art that's made. But I still think I can learn a lot and grow and engage with art, even if it does mean that I may end up being disappointed. I still think I can grow and learn and appreciate and benefit from art being created, even if it may end up with me being completely and utterly disappointed. But yeah, if there's art being made that no longer supports something that aligns, or Almost died. Oh, okay, that could have been bad. No longer aligns with what I believe in, and no longer supports things that I can support, then you bet your ass I'm no longer engaging with it. And you bet your ass I am no longer gonna give it the same level of support or focus from before. And there's another element to this. There's another element to this. Come on. How is that missing? Oh, come on, man. Get back. Mm-hmm. Aww. You got it. Okay. So, there's another element to this. The element of perception. Woo, social perception. What artists do you follow? What artists do you support? And the social connections you make out of those things. Those are another element of why you may not want to stop supporting an artist. Because if all your friends still support an artist, you're gonna feel more inclined to support that artist too, even if they don't agree with your moral alignment. So, I encourage you today to stop supporting artists that do things that you would never do and say things you would never say. Because at the end of the day, the people and the art you surround yourself with and the art you support and the people you support are closely aligned with who you are and how you are as a person. So even if you're a creator, think about that. Yee! I don't think I have much else to say. Welp. How much longer did I film? Oh. Well, I'm glad I've got that out of my system. So, if you enjoyed the video, please give me a subscribe. I don't know if I'll make another video like this again, and I don't really want to, because this came from a place of frustration. So yeah. Thank you for watching. Do I have the bravery to post and edit this? I certainly hope so.